something's fantastic, but it's really not, is the next person going to think it's fantastic? Well, it might depend on what you're talking about. If you're talking about news and there's some grim news, but you're like, oh, that's great news, and you tell someone about it, is that going to change their opinion? What about if we're talking about business and there's a company that maybe is performing poorly and you're like, no, I love that company's awesome. Will that manipulate people? Well, studies show that this makes a vast difference. What category of news you're commenting on. My name is Paul Basilka, Ivy Masters Learning Center and IvyMasters.com, and today we're going to look at Test 5, Section 1, number 41, which reads, data presented in the figure most directly support which idea from the passage. So let's see what's going on in the figure. You want to make sure you understand what's going on in the figure before you go looking at answer choices. So the title, artificially upvoted comments versus control comments. And you've got your control here, your maximum, your minimum, and your artificially upvoted comments. And down below we've got category of news, and it tells us also, it's a good idea to read the captions. Mean scores of the comments in each category, with the score of each comment being determined by the number of positive votes, website users minus the negative votes. And so, what do we see in this category of news? Here we see business, which is here. And what we see is that the control, this is how business is really doing. But if you say, hey, it's doing great, the artificial upvotes are going to manipulate that group. Then if you look at something like general news over here, you can see that if you're like, hey, the news is great, and it's really not, then you're not going to sway that person's opinion very much. So you want to look at the chart, the table, the graphic, whatever it may be, before you look at the answer choices. We've done our due diligence. Now let's see what types of answer choices we've got. Answer choice A, the mean score of artificially downvoted comments is similar to that of the control group. This is wrong because the chart is not talking about downvoted comments. By the way, I realize we have not looked at the passage yet, but in these questions, typically you could eliminate answer choices before you look at the passage. And then if you have it down to 2, you could look at the passage to see which one best fits. Answer choice B. The patterns observed in the experiment suggest that people are suspicious of negative social influence. Again, we have artificial upvotes, not artificial downvotes. You might say artificial downvotes would be negative social influence. So answer choice B is not relevant either. Answer choice C. The positive bias observed in users of the news site may not apply to human behavior in other contexts. Well, we do have news sites, people artificially upvoting things on news sites, but we don't have human behavior in other contexts. So it looks like it's not going to be C, and notice we didn't even look at the passage yet. It looks like it is going to be D. So if you're crunched for time, look at the graphic before you look at the passage, because it could be anywhere in the passage. Answer choice D. The type of story being commented on has an impact on the degree to which people can be influenced. Now that makes sense. As we saw in business, that would have a big influence on people if it's an artificial upvote, where it would have almost no influence on people if it's general news. It does say, though, that the data presented in the figure most directly supports which idea from the passage. There should be support for this in the passage. And if we look at the passage, then what we find in around here, our friend Duncan Watts points out that the category of news items in the experiment had a strong effect on how much people could be manipulated. I would have thought that business is pretty similar to economics, yet they find a much stronger effect, almost 50% stronger for the former than the latter. Thank you for joining us today. If you like this video, click like. You could share it with someone who has difficulty with the questions about the graphic, and especially the ones that are paired with the passage. If there's any question you'd like to see answered from any official PSAT, SAT, or ACT, leave that in the comments. I'd be happy to shoot a video on it. And click subscribe so you don't miss anything. Have a great day.